Welcome to another episode of Virtual City Hall School. When I have students with me at City Hall, they love exploring and discussing the many pieces of public art that we have in City Hall. And then we head into downtown Edmonton and find public art in places like Rogers Place and at the base of the funicular. Students are then curious to find out about public art throughout the entire city. So today's guest looks at some of those pieces of public art as his children. So we have David from the Edmonton Arts Council joining us today. Thanks you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to turn the interview over to our student reporter, Leon.
Hello. Okay, so you do arts conservation, am I right?
I do arts conservation, and I also plan public art for the city.
Okay. What is the most rewarding part of your job?
The most rewarding part of my job is when I love seeing when the artworks are in the ground. I love seeing how artists work, but I really love when I see people interacting with the artworks that are in our parks and outside of our civic buildings. I love seeing kids running up to artworks, pulling their parents, showing them how fantastic they are and how colorful they are. I love seeing people trying to figure out what the art is and asking themselves questions about why it's there. I think that's what art is there for.
Yeah, I have taken a couple of pictures myself with some art, just like around in the parks and stuff. Okay. Why do you think public art is important?
Well, I think public art and all art is important. All art is important because it's a communication tool. Public art specifically is really important to me, and I think it's important to the city because when we put art in free and accessible spaces for everyone, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, it doesn't matter what your background is. As long as that artwork is free and accessible, anyone can access it, anyone can partake in it, anyone can be part of a conversation around that artwork. And to me, that's really the importance of it is that here's a thing sitting in a park that brings people together so they can have a shared experience with one another.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us about the percent of art policy.
Sure. So the percent for art policy, I think for a lot of people, the policy work is pretty boring. I find it really interesting because this is where we have an opportunity to really shape what art in the city and art planning for the city could look like. But right now, the policy that we have says that 1% of construction costs, so like for the public library downtown, 1% of qualifying construction costs goes towards new public artworks in the library and outside of the library and around that space as well.
Okay. How does the team decide which artist works to use?
Well, that's a good question, and I think that is something that a lot of citizens in the city want to know, and it's never been really talked about very often. But we sit down, we sit down with city planners, we sit down with the city architects, and we bring artists together, planners, architects, and we bring citizens and community members together. And then we go through all the applications of artists that have submitted for a call, and they might be from Edmonton, they might be from Alberta, they might be from just Treaty 6 territory, because of course Edmonton it sits on Treaty 6 territory, which is much larger than just the city of Edmonton. It could be international or it could be just across Canada. And we come together and we look at what the artists are planning to do and what they'd like to do with that space, and how they would address creating something that really reflects the space, the building, the citizens, and creates those opportunities for people to gather and experience public art. And then we vote.
Yeah, I've definitely also wondered about that question. Okay. Many of the public art pieces are outdoors. What kinds of problems does that cause for your team?
Well, that's interesting because there are so many problems that can happen, and there's a lot of problems that could happen that don't happen. And one of the reasons is because there are no materials made specifically for making public art only. It's not like a building. It's not quite like a car where it's made of metal and it's painted and there's rubber and there's glass. Public art can really be made from almost anything. One of the big challenges that we're having right now is that when we have electronic artwork, so anything with lights, anything that plugs into a wall, anything with sound, is that the technology changes and we have to update that every few years. But that's a challenge for us, but then I think that's also a benefit for the collection and for the citizens, because otherwise we're really restricted with what kind of artwork we can have in public art spaces outside.
Yeah. Yeah, putting in the extra work to get like something more special really does kind of make you more happy, I guess.
I think so, and I think that if it makes the citizens happy, but I think it also makes it possible for other kinds of artists to explore making things for outside and for the public realm as well.
Okay, what type of art would you like to see more of in Edmonton public spaces?
I would just love to see more art of every kind, every type, every shape, made from everything. I just love art. I went to art school to be an artist. And I just think that the more art that we have around us, the more that we have people creating things for themselves and for others to see and share in, I think the better.
Yeah, having variety really does help, and it makes everything more beautiful.
I think so too.
My final question is, during this time of isolation, what is something that brings you joy?
Well, I have a small family. I have a wife and I have an 11-year-old son. So spending time with them really makes me happy. We've been working a lot in our garden on the front yard. We took down a fence when we first moved into the house 10 years ago. And we wanted to make a beautiful garden that not only we could have, but also that people walking their dogs could experience as well. But I've also started making artwork again because my son has inspired me to start drawing again and start sculpting again and just start playing with materials and just having a little bit of fun.
Yeah, my mom also loves gardening, so I can see why you would also want to have like a beautiful garden right there for everyone to see.
Yeah. It just makes me smile. Yeah.
Well, this interview made, this interview made me smile. Thank you for the great questions, Leon, and the answers. Every episode has a challenge at the end. Today, students, we have 2 challenges. The first one comes from me. I'd like you to get onto the internet and check out the Edmonton Public Art Collection website. It's a really cool interactive website where you can see pieces of art and learn more about them. And David's got the second challenge for you.
I do have a challenge for you. So I went out and I took a picture of the side yard next to our house. And we have a big patch of green space. And one thing I've always wanted to do was just start putting sculptures and artwork out there. So my challenge to all of you is to go out into your neighborhood, take a picture of an area of grass, something where you see a lot of people walking their dogs or kids biking past, and just draw on that picture and imagine what kind of art you might like to see there to put into that space for your community to enjoy. So that's my challenge to you.
Excellent. Well, that's a great challenge. We'll be curious to see what you come up with. Thank you for watching and thank you for your time, David. Bye, David. Bye, Leon.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leon. Great interview.
Thanks.